The topic of behavioral euthanasia can often be controversial and stir many emotions in our community. Trish McMillan is back along with our wonderful colleague Sue Alexander to inform us why this is a topic that needs to be discussed more so that we can address the controversy as well as dispel many of the misconceptions. Trish and Sue also talk about their amazing support group, Losing Lulu, for anyone that has gone through the journey of living with a dog where behavioral euthanasia was the ultimate outcome. Trish is an internationally known speaker on the topics of animal behavior and sheltering. She holds a Master of Science degree in animal behavior and is a certified professional dog trainer. Trish worked for the ASPCA for nearly 8 years, first as director of animal behavior at the New York City shelter, and then with the field team, helping assess and rehabilitate dogs from cruelty cases, dogfighting, and hoarding situations. She speaks and consults nationally and internationally on animal sheltering issues, dog, cat, and horse behavior, dog aggression, and defensive handling. She also runs a popular online shelter dog behavior mentorship and other courses through the Shelter Behavior Hub, and is one of the co-founders of that Losing Lulu Facebook support group. Sue Alexander has over 25 years of experience training and handling dogs, both her and those of her clients. Sue has been teaching dog obedience classes since 1993. She has participated in a wide variety of dog sports, including obedience, tracking, retrieving, Schutzhund, nose work, and agility with her own dogs and those of her clients. She founded Dogs in the Park, and she was a student at the University of Guelph, and she co-owns that with her husband, John. She is particularly interested in the rehabilitation of aggressive dogs and the resolution of behavioral problems with dogs in family homes. Sue is a well-respected speaker both online and in person and has delivered programming in Canada, the USA, the UK, and Ireland. Sue has delivered webinars, seminars, and lectures on applied behavior analysis, resolving behavior problems, and working with clients. And don't forget, you can support this podcast by going to aggressivedog.com, where there are a variety of resources to learn more about helping dogs with aggression issues, including the upcoming Aggression in Dogs conference happening from September 29th through October 1st, 2023 in Chicago, Illinois, with both in-person and online options. You can also learn more about the Aggression in Dogs Master Course, which is the most comprehensive course available anywhere in the world for learning how to work with and help dogs with aggression issues. Hey guys, welcome to the Biting End of the Dog. I'm here with two of my good friends, Trish McMillan and Sue Alexander. I usually jump into people's bios at the beginning of the show, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of my personal experiences with both of these guys. I've known them for a while. Trish is my partner in crime on the workshop circuit. She's actually helped me get out onto the speaking stage, and I give much of that credit to her and teaching me so much about behavior in general in the shelter world as well. Trish is a guru in working with the ASPCA. She's got the master's in animal behavior. She has McMillan Animal Behavior, which is in North Carolina, and also is on Hill, which is this really cool place if you ever want to go visit this magical place with all kinds of different animals where you can learn about horses, cats, dogs, chickens, goats, and so many other critters. So I'm really excited to have Trish here. And Sue, I've known way back from the IWABC days, sort of like a mentor in my early days of the old Yahoo groups. Sue was always very helpful in steering me in the right direction with some of my behavior misconceptions, I would say. We have this running joke, Sue's sort of like the hardcore Trish, because you guys might not know. Sue, I think it was broken foot or broken. What did you break? You broke something.
I broke my leg and tore all the ligaments up my foot.
Yeah, and so Sue's like hardcore. Like she's like, let me just throw a little spit and mud in that. And like 2 days later, she's like traveling around and walking around on this thing. And like every time Sue's got something going on, it's like 2 days later, I see her up and around and moving. So it's definitely very hardcore behavior. But Sue owns Dogs in the Park up in Canada, and we're going to be talking about more about that as well. But we're going to drive into the conversation of something that really is sometimes difficult to talk about, something that needs to be talked about more, though, in our industry. I know the conversation's been ongoing for the last few years more readily, but it's definitely something that often is kind of a tough path for people to navigate, especially for trainers talking to clients. So I do want to give a content warning in the beginning for anybody that might be considering behavioral euthanasia or maybe has had to experience this previously, that we will be talking about behavioral euthanasia throughout the episode.
Can we add in the non-content warning of, even though we're going to talk about something really, really difficult, Trish and I are happy people, and we have a lot of fun, and we are playful. And that's a really important part of how we approach behavioral euthanasia. So, yes, I want us to be really aware of this as a sensitive topic. But, Mike, there's something else we've got to keep in mind, and that is the animals that we are talking about are really, really important to the people that we work with. And so it's really important that you understand that although this is a sad topic and it's a difficult topic, there's also moments of enormous joy. The people who come to us that we help with their dogs and sometimes cats and giraffes and llamas and elephants and hippopotami, those animals are really important to people. And so when we're talking about this, we may have a moment where we get sad, and I might cry. I've cried on camera more than twice about this, and I'm used to it. Trish is used to it. You might cry. It's okay. I don't mind. But it's okay, too, if we laugh. There have been some really funny things that have happened that are surrounding behavioral euthanasia. And what I want people to understand about behavioral euthanasia is that the range of emotions, that's cool. It's okay. So it's okay to laugh about the time that I had to take a dog for behavioral euthanasia. I loaded him up in the back of the car and we drove to the vet. And on the way to the veterinarians, he got into a box of motor oil and he bit into it. And then in my rear view mirror, I see arcs of motor oil on the inside of my car. And, although it was a really sad day when we lost Alex, it was tragic. It was shortly after I got married. It was my husband's dog, and it was a behavioral euthanasia. He had tried to attack one of my staff members. That was a horrible day in my life. And every time John and I talk about it, we also laugh about cleaning up all that motor oil. It was a whole case. It was 12 liters of motor oil. And so I think it's really important that we understand that when we're talking about behavioral euthanasia, let's let ourselves be emotional in all aspects. It's okay to laugh, and it's okay to laugh and cry at the same time. And it's okay to say, I love this animal and I hate him so much. And he's hurt me so badly. And he's so important to me and my family. That is actually normal. And it's really, really cool that we've got that opportunity to experience that range of emotion. And it's something Trish and I talk about a lot.
Yeah, this is a really important point, and I'm glad you brought that up because we often think of behavioral euthanasia as just, the negative emotional aspects of it, but we need to, as you mentioned, bring in the positive side to sort of balance things out for ourselves as well and to survive through that. Trish was on, I think it was on 4 years ago, so 3-4 years ago on season 1, where we were talking about behavioral euthanasia and the formation of the group, Losing Lulu, the Facebook group, which has grown tremendously since then and evolved. So Trish, can you tell us a little bit, how that came about and sort of what you've seen evolve over the years?
Yeah. It's been, is it 5 years or 4 years we've been doing Losing?
So this will be season 4. So yeah, well, you had started it though before that. So
yeah, I think it's 4 years since we lost Lulu. And the thing with these dogs who are euthanized for behavior is if they were 100% aggressive 100% of the time, it would be an easy decision. But they all have their great sides, and they tend to be very smart dogs. They tend to have some really wonderful qualities. And Lulu was a dog that I brought from a shelter. I brought her home as a foster. I occasionally foster dogs. And she was just this sweet, happy, wiggly dog. And she'd recently had a litter of puppies, and she was looking pretty rough. And I thought, bring you home, get you spayed, get you cleaned up, and you're going to be a beautiful dog. And when I got her home, it took a while. It took a number of months before it came out that she had some issues with other dogs. And at first they were just mild issues, and she was picky about her friends, and she hadn't done any damage, and she was still in the category of, let's find her a home maybe she doesn't want a dog roommate. But on one really terrible night, New Year's Eve, 2018, I believe, she attacked my smaller dog, my little Puerto Rican street dog, in a way that she was out to kill her. She was not going to let go. Fortunately, I had a trainer friend over. It took 2 of us and a brake stick to get them split up. And she did $800 worth of damage to my smaller dog in the couple of minutes that it took us. And thank goodness we had the right tools to break up that fight. And I called the rescue group I was working through. I said, this is no longer a dog that meets our criteria for adoptability. And they agreed to pay for a behavioral euthanasia. So we had Aleli in one car and we had Lulu in another car, and we took her in and had her euthanized. And my friend who was with me was just like, don't say anything about this on the internet. Just lie to Theodore's friends, tell them she got adopted, let the whole thing die down. And that is not my style. I'm a terrible liar. They would want pictures. I'm not going to be able to Photoshop Lulu into pictures. So I waited a few days before I told the story. And I told it on my social media first. And my friends understand if Trish McMillan makes a behavioral euthanasia decision, there's probably good reason for it. But Theodore has 40,000 friends who just love pit bulls, and Lulu was a pit bull type dog. And most of them were understanding, but it was more sort of pet people or, beginner rescue people who hadn't had to deal with a dog like Lulu before. And I got a lot of grief from that contingent, and I was called a murderer. I was called worse things. I'm not going to repeat them on your podcast. And just got so much judgment for making this call. And I mentioned it to Sue, and Sue said, we need a place to talk about this. And I was like, yeah, and I need a pony and a unicorn, and that's fine. But you don't say that to Sue Alexander. So take it, Sue.
Well, my favorite comment came from it was probably a pet owner who was pretty passionate about pets. And she said, you didn't even consult a trainer. And I love that comment because, exactly what trainer did she figure was going to have more information than Trish? But, it reflects what we go through when we face a behavioral euthanasia. And that is that most people don't understand. And in fact, I started losing Lulu after being on a thread where somebody said, we should have a support group. And somebody else said, well, that's a good idea. And somebody else said, well, that's a good idea. Yeah, we should really have a support group. And it just all these people kept piling on. And I'm sitting there looking at my computer and thinking to myself, well, if we should, why don't we? And if we don't, what can I do about that? And as with many good ideas, it started with, how hard can that be? And so I started a Facebook group with the intent of, it might be a couple of hundred people, like, maybe my good friends, maybe Mike will join and maybe Trish will join and maybe I'll be there. And, we can all hang out and drink coffee and talk about, how hard this is. Well, within the first week, we have 400 people. And I remember having just an absolute panic moment of looking at this and going, I don't know how I'm going to cope with this many people. 2 weeks later, we had 1,000, and it's been growing ever since. We're almost at 24,000 now.
Wow.
And what I did, as you know, Mike and Trish knows, I live with a traumatic brain injury, which means that sometimes my screen time is very limited, and my screen time was really limited at that point. So I was able to do, a little bit of screen time, but it very quickly became apparent that we needed to moderate this. And we have the most incredible group of people who help us to moderate this. We've got one person who pretty much manages all the people who ask to come in. And we have a whole bunch of other people who manage the post queue because all the posts are moderated. And we have a motto. One of our volunteers made up a motto, and it has changed my life. It has absolutely changed who I am. It's changed what I am. It changed how I practice. And that is keep it kind. And my gosh, if all we did in our whole lives was kept things kind, imagine what we could do. And the thing for me is I don't have to imagine it because every single day I get the information of keeping it kind matters. It matters a lot. And we have created the kindest, most thoughtful place that you can imagine.
No, it is strictly moderated. If somebody comes in and they're like, why didn't you try this? Bye-bye. You cannot be on Losing Lulu if you're going to second guess it, because what is the person going to do? Dig up their dead dog, reanimate them, get a different trainer, try a different technique. It's too late. Even if you don't agree with every single decision that's been made, these animals are gone. And it's not just dogs. We have cats, horses, rabbits, snakes, all kinds of animals. They're all dearly loved. They are all missed. People are suffering, and second guessing is not going to help anything. The kindest thing we can do is let them tell their story, be free of judgment. And it is a really unique place on the internet. It is on Facebook. It is not anywhere else at this point. But
well, we do have a website.
No, that's true. We have a website now.
I didn't know that.
We have losinglulu.com.
It's brand new.
Well, it's not brand new anymore. It's now about 6 months old. We did that because we wanted to make sure that we maintained control and copyright of our content. So we have what we call hippo essays. And Trish, you're going to be very excited. I went to the Met today. I'm in New York City. I went to the Met. You told me, Mike, that I could go off topic a little bit. Oh, you're just going to be so excited.
So dangerous.
So tell them about, oh, it is so dangerous. It's so dangerous, but it's so good. I got something. Its name is William. I did not know that Lulu's partner was going to be called William. And where did William go? Okay, tell them about hippo essays while I find William.
So one thing that Sue is really good at is creating communities and, getting everybody pulling in the same direction. She has wrangled this group. We call them the Aurors, our group of people who moderate the list. And we are all pulling in the same direction, and we all agree on rules, and we have meetings, and we have coffee. And one of the wonderful things she's done to keep the culture of the group alive is to write these essays, and she calls them hippo essays. She picked an animal that we are unlikely to see on Lulu, and she talks about keeping it kind via the hippo essays and why we have the culture we have, and they're brilliant. They're wonderful. Oh,
that's great.
Yeah. What is that made out of? That looks delicious. Is it edible?
No, it is a magnet. I actually get two hippos there. So at the Met, I didn't know this. At the Met, their mascot is a hippo, and the hippo's name is William. And I needed a hippo magnet. And Mike, I will take a picture of this and send it to you. This should be the icon for this particular episode.
Send it to me.
I will. I'll take a picture and send it. I'm so excited about this. And Trish, I got a hippo postcard to send you and everything because, I wanted to choose an animal that we could talk about in the abstract so that we could talk about, if we want to talk about training, and I talk about dog training, then the person who has lost their cat is going to say, well, that doesn't apply to me. But if I want to talk about training in the abstract, and I want to say, we may not have chosen the best training method for our Lulu, and maybe that contributed, but it doesn't matter because now that your Lulu is gone, you can take that lesson and you can move on. And so one of my hippo essays, I talk about the importance of not naming names because it's really hard on the internet. If somebody, goes online and says, oh, I worked with Sue Alexander and she told me I should kill my dog, that's going to hurt me professionally. And in fact, that's not what I would ever say to a client. So when I'm talking about behavioral euthanasia with a client, I will say, I think we should talk about behavioral euthanasia. I do not say you must kill your dog. And so one of our rules is you can't name names. And we needed somebody to talk about this in the abstract. So I said, if you had a hippopotamus and you went to a very famous hippopotamus trainer, and then your hippopotamus flipped over a tourist boat and ate the firefighters who came to rescue everybody. That's kind of a funny way of talking about it. And so we sort of ended up with the hippopotamus as our model. And I did not know that many people refer to pit bulls as house hippos. And I had no idea. And so I just put this out there. And so we refer to my essays, and I've got about, I don't know, a dozen of them that talk about various aspects of behavioral euthanasia. One of them is running around and saying, I worked with Trish, I worked with Sue, I worked with Mike, I worked with whomever, and then saying, and my dog died. That's not useful information when you're grieving.
Yeah. Well, you get so much shame and blame from every other place that we try to get people to tell their stories, but without blaming the breeder, blaming the shelter, blaming the trainer, blaming them. A lot of them blame themselves, and it's so painful. Reading the cases on losing Lulu, and if you are a dog trainer or a shelter person, you are welcome to join. Just answer the screening questions appropriately and honestly. They are some of the most fascinating case studies you will ever see. And so many of them are so similar. People get a puppy from wherever. There's some early signs, and social maturity hits. It often gets worse. They go through a process of different trainers, different meds, different veterinarians, and we all end up in the same place. Like, it's one of those romance novels, they all end the same way. Lulu stories kind of all end the same way, but it's been really interesting that people have come from all over the world. The animals have come from all different places. They are all different breeds of dogs, but the stories are so similar, and a lot of the feelings are really similar. And I talked on the last Bitey End of the Dog, I told my personal story. If you want to go back to that one, I'm not going to tell it again because I will start crying. But a lot of the feelings are really similar, and I try to prepare people, whether you're in the shelter, whether it's a personal client who is going through a behavioral euthanasia. One thing is, you're going to want to try everything. And the person that I co-owned my dog with made an actual list and put it on the fridge. And every time we got near the bottom of the list, I'd be like, okay, I guess we have to make the decision. He would find one more thing. Like, we haven't tried this medication, or we haven't tried more exercise, or we haven't tried the midnight walk club. Like, there is always going to be one more thing to try. And I like Sue's line, you don't have to try everything. You just have to try everything that is reasonable for you.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to hear more from Trish and Sue. Hey friends, it's me again, and I hope you are enjoying this episode. You may have figured out that something I deeply care about is helping dogs with aggression issues live less stressful, less confined, more enriched, and overall happier lives with their guardians. Aggression is so often misunderstood, and we can change that through education, like we receive from so many of the wonderful guests on this podcast. In addition to the podcast, I have 2 other opportunities for anyone looking to learn more about helping dogs with aggression issues, which include the Aggression in Dogs Master Course and the Aggression in Dogs Conference. If you want to learn more about the most comprehensive course on aggression taught anywhere in the world, head on over to aggressivedog.com and click on the Dog Pros tab and then the Master Course. The course gives you access to 23 modules on everything from assessment to safety to medical issues to the behavior change plans we use in a number of different cases, including lessons taught by Dr. Chris Pockel, Kim Brophy, and Jessica Dolce. You'll also receive access to a private Facebook group with over 1,000 of your fellow colleagues and dog pros, all working with aggression cases. After you finish the course, you'll also gain access to a private live group mentor session portal with me, where we practice working through cases together. And if you need CEUs, we've got you covered. We're approved for just about every major training and behavior credential out there. This is truly the flagship course offered on aggression in dogs, and it's perfect for pet pros that want to set themselves apart and take their knowledge and expertise to the next level, or even for pet guardians who are seeking information to help their own dog. And don't forget to join me for the 4th annual Aggression in Dogs Conference, which is happening online and in person from Chicago, Illinois, September 29th through October 1st, 2023. This year's lineup includes many of the amazing guests you might have heard on the podcast, including Sue Sternberg, Dr. Tim Lewis, Dr. Christine Calder, Sindor Pangal, Cyrus Stremming, Sean Will, Masa Nishimuta, and many, many more. Head on over to aggressivedog.com and click on the conference tab to learn more about the exciting agenda on everything from advanced concepts in veterinary behavior cases to working with aggression in shelter environments and even intra-household dog-dog aggression. And I wanted to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors for the conference. As a family of world-class trainers, Fenzi Dog Sports Academy provides expert and accessible instruction for competitive dog sports using the most progressive training methods and positive reinforcement techniques. Through their online platform, students are able to access professional dog training no matter your location or pup's skill level. FDSA believes the bond between the dog and human is a proud and life-changing partnership, and they'll work with you to develop a respectful and kind relationship with your furry best friend. Check out FDSA at FenziDogSportsAcademy.com. All right, we're back here with Trish McMillan and Sue Alexander to talk about the wonderful resources they've created around this difficult topic. I want to also jump into, though, and just, take a moment to give kudos to you guys and to your team for creating such a safe space and the creative ways you're doing it too. Kindness, you guys know, is a word I use quite often in my messaging, and I can't imagine the monumental task, right, of having to create a safe space for 24,000 people discussing probably one of the most difficult topics on the planet to discuss. So, I just wanted to make sure that you are receiving the recognition that deserves, because it is not an easy task. I mean, to run any kind of Facebook group on any topic is hard enough as it is. So,
and it is our mod team. I give all the kudos to them.
Yes,
they are the most amazing, kind people on the planet. They really
are.
Yes,
and it's so important to understand that being kind actually takes a fairly firm hand. So, if somebody says, well, you should have, they will get that moderated. That comment will be moderated out. Often we will have discussions on the moderation list about a post, and it'll be a post that we kind of look at it and we say, okay, is this going to contribute to grief support? And often what we come to is that's not actually grief support. That's anger, and it's not misplaced anger. Mm-hmm. It's fine to be angry, and it's fine to be angry in ways that are productive. Anger should help you to know what you need to change. And it's fine to say, I'm really angry that this happened. I am really angry at my breeder because she knew that mom was aggressive, or I'm really angry at the rescue because they knew the dog had severe separation anxiety, or even I'm really angry at the advice that I got from my trainer. But what's not appropriate is to use Lulu for retribution, because we do need to process anger. I'm angry at lots of things. And to be able to say, I am angry that I didn't get a job or I didn't get an opportunity, that's fine. But if I say, oh, well, and that's all, I thought Trish was my best friend and it's all Trish's fault, that's just going to hurt Trish, and that's not going to make our friendship better.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing up the emotions aspect, because I kind of want to take a deeper dive into that. And it seems to be the theme of this season's episodes, actually. Where you'll hear some of the other guests I have on. We're diving much more into the human side of things. We talk about dogs, of course, but the human side is really an element that is a focus of the show this year. So I'd love to get your takeaways on, you had mentioned anger as one component that can be an emotion that we experience, but some of the other ones that often don't get talked about when somebody's gone through this decision or considering this decision, and all of the emotions that they have to go through. So things like guilt and, sadness, grief, all of those things start to pile up. So what have you learned over the last few years, now that you've kind of got a huge sample size of really seeing people's emotions? Can you kind of give us some of your takeaways there?
Grief and relief.
Yeah, it is a weird kind of grief. Like if you put your old animal down, it is mostly grief. This dog has been with me 16 years. She's been with me through all of these life changes, and I have to say goodbye. There may be a little bit of relief that I don't have to get up in the middle of the night to let her out 6 times anymore. But with a behavioral euthanasia, the grief can be so profound because the animal is usually leaving us much before their time. And you get your life back. You feel relieved that when Chinook left, I thought I could have people over for dinner again. I could go for dog walks during daylight hours. I don't have to shut off all the lights on Halloween and turn off all the stereo and just pretend I'm not home so that he doesn't blow up over and over. And then there's the guilt at feeling relieved that your best friend is no longer with you. So it's such and I think many of us with a behavioral euthanasia, the good days seem so much more good. I made the decision to euthanize Chinook twice, and the first time, he had such a great day. He had his last walk. He had his last steak. There was no aggression. And we chickened out. We called the vet right before the appointment and said, we cannot do it. And I think when you have a good day, when you're living with an animal who has some very profoundly terrible moments, those good days feel so much better than the good day with my lovely, friendly dogs I have now. They're all good days. They're all kind of the same, but when it's like this, it's a whole different feeling.
Well, and I think, the other thing about the grief and relief aspect of it is that when I look at the level to which some of the people on Losing Lulu go, in order to accommodate the needs of their profoundly, profoundly ill animals. And I want to be very clear that I believe that we are not euthanizing healthy animals. We are euthanizing animals who are not healthy, because health includes behavior. And if you're not behaviorally healthy, if you're not able to live in a normal situation, even with support, then we are alleviating suffering when we euthanize. And so I think about one case that was on Lulu about a week ago, and it was a lady who was talking about how guilty she felt for euthanizing a dog that they had kept going for about 5 years. They raised it from puppyhood. And at about the age of 2, so social maturity right there, the dog began to become aggressive, and it became progressively more aggressive. As of last November, during the American Thanksgiving holiday, she moved out of their family home into a trailer on their property with the dog so that the dog could keep breathing. But it meant that she left her children and her husband and her other dogs living in the house, and she was living separate from them. It meant that her family was removed of having her there at Thanksgiving because the dog was not able to be left for long periods of time. The dog was self-injurious, I believe, as well as being dangerously aggressive. For the Christmas holidays, her family is very much a family that celebrates Christmas, and they like to have guests over. Her family had Christmas without her because she needed to be in the trailer with the dog. And when she finally got to the point where she realized that this stopgap measure didn't meet the dog's needs and the dog attacked her and she could no longer care for the dog, she euthanized it. And she says, I don't feel like I did enough. And I think one of the things that we have to realize about this is that when you live with an animal with a profound behavior problem for a very long time, normal isn't normal. I had a horse that I euthanized for a behavior problem. She was very dangerous to me. And Trish and I talked about behavioral euthanasia with Kayak many, many, many times, like for years. And when it finally became apparent that I was not going to be able to resolve this, and I decided to euthanize her, I was able to say, I am going to give her the last couple of weeks, and it's going to be wonderful for her. And I will tell you what, it made the grief relief cycle so much better, even though it feels like it wouldn't, because on her last day, she had 5 pounds of carrots and a pound of gummy spearmints, and she had her friends, and she got brushed, and she got to eat grass, and all the things that a horse loves to do. And when I look back on that, I don't have the memory of having had to move out of my house and miss great family events, because there are so many confusing, conflicting parts of grief there. Because not only do you end up grieving the loss of the animal and the loss of the potential of the relationship, you also end up grieving things like that lady is going to have missed her children's Christmas in 2022 forever. That's gone. And there is a grief to that as well. And I think that that's one of the more complex things that I've become aware of in the last couple of years, is that we don't just grieve the animal. We grieve the years we didn't go on vacation. And we grieve that we couldn't go to our niece's christening because we couldn't leave the dog alone, or we couldn't have people over to celebrate, our spouse's graduation from university, or, there's all these things that it's not just the loss of the dog's life that we grieve. It's everything that surrounds that.
Well, the caregiver burden is huge. Mike and I had some conversations with Kelly Ballantyne at the Indiana seminar. She's written about the caregiver burden on living with profoundly behaviorally disturbed animals. And it is not uncommon for somebody to be sleeping on the couch with the dog and the other person to be sleeping upstairs with the kids. And it breaks up relationships. Like I said, my ex, he became an ex over this dog. Part of it was I was okay with behavioral euthanasia before he was. Like there's no such thing as you both agreeing on it on the same time. So if there's more than one person involved in the animal's life, often one person comes to the decision first, and that can cause so much friction.
That's such a good point. Yeah.
When I'm counseling families about a dog with a serious behavior problem, one of the things that I like to talk to the clients about is that we have to come to an agreement that everybody is comfortable with when we're talking about living with an animal with a profound behavior problem. Because I have actually had about 10 families where the adults have ended up in divorce because of the dog. And the one that I often think about the most was 2 huskies that I worked with, and they were trying to eat each other, literally eat each other. And they had terrible, damaging fights over and over again. And the family kind of put up with this. And when I say eat, I do mean consume. That was what they were after. They had terrible, damaging fights, and then the family had a baby. And mom decided, I can't live with this with a baby. I'm perfectly content living with it when we don't have a child in the house. And that actually ended the relationship because dad said, I'm not going to euthanize a dog that isn't elderly. And thank you, Rue.
Rue has opinions on that too.
And it's something that I think is really important that we talk about with families is that, what is the impact on your children? What is the impact on your spouse? What's the impact on the relationship that you have with the important people in your life? It's really important because we can't live solely vicariously for the dog. It's not appropriate.
And you're bringing up so many salient points, because what I'm thinking about as well is, you sometimes see comments in the training community about this particular method causing more behavioral euthanasias or this particular tool or something like that, which when you think about it is pretty ridiculous because what's not factoring in is all of these things you're talking about, all of these factors that are so unique to each individual and to each dog, to each family, that impacts that decision. It's not, training matters, but it's just when you take a step back, it's such a small piece of the entire puzzle of when it comes to having a dog with aggression issues, right? And in that regard, people will face a lot of criticism from others, whether it's before or while they're trying to make the decision or after they've made the decision. So what are some coping strategies or strategies really to deal with those folks that are throwing hate at you? I'm sure you've seen some strategies talked about in the group, but also what are your experiences there?
I am big on deleting and blocking. What I did when I was getting hate on my dog's page, I'm not going to leave those comments up calling me a murderer. That is not relevant to what's going on here. That's not just hurting me, that's hurting everybody else who has gone through this as well. So I am a big fan of not giving any air to these arguments, and we certainly do that on Lulu too. Just if you are not here for support, you are not here.
I also like to think that it's important that we start fostering good ally behavior. And we hear that tossed around a lot, but this is really, really concrete. In the training community up until very recently, saying I spoke about behavioral euthanasia to my client has been very taboo. And I've gotten a lot of grief about it. I know many, many years ago at the first IAABC conference, I was one of the speakers. I was talking about service dogs. And I said at the end of it, they were asking, what else should we have conversations about? And I said, we need to talk about euthanasia. And I got a lot of pushback from people at the conference that wasn't our purview, that wasn't appropriate, that we should never be talking about behavioral euthanasia. And I thought, okay, but if I don't talk about it, what am I supposed to do with my client who has 2 huskies who are giving damaging bites, who are injuring people who are trying to pull them apart? And now there's a crawling baby in that house. What am I supposed to suggest to them? What am I supposed to talk to them about? Because that isn't something that is particularly safe. And it's not something that I can recommend rehoming. And so for a long time, we were in limbo where people just didn't want to talk about it. And I think now we're at a point now where, when you're at the conferences and you're talking to other trainers and a trainer says, hey, I've got this really, really, really difficult case and I don't know what to do about it. And it's an Australian Shepherd crossed with a Norwegian gutter hound. And you go, well, what an interesting cross that might be. There is no such thing as a Norwegian gutter hound, as far as I know. That's my mythical breed that I use when I talk about sort of theoretical dogs. But somebody says, I've got this dog on my caseload, and the dog got loose in a park and it caused a damaging bite, and and this and this and this, and the dog keeps getting loose, and I want to talk about what our options are, but I don't have a lot of good options left. And one of the things that happens then is people say, oh, well, let's talk about tools. It's obviously all about tools. And I say, no, let's talk about quality of life. The first thing is your client's dog has a really crappy quality of life, and your clients have a crappy quality of life. And let's be really clear that the best trainer in the world may not be able to resolve problem X, whatever problem X might be. And I have seen personally cases that involve behavioral euthanasia with everything from aggression through separation anxiety, through pica. I worked with a dog that was eating things that were just not food items, and in the end was not redeemable. We couldn't solve that problem. I've seen dogs who were spinners, so, compulsive disorders. And so we look at these things and we say, if it's not my job to talk to these people about the possibility of it and find out where they sit with it, then whose job is it? Well, if we refer to the veterinarian gets 15 minutes at most twice a year to get to know that client. I see my clients when they're in active program, usually 3 times a week. So I'm seeing them in a group class. I'm seeing them in an online check-in, and I usually see them at an off-leash dog walk, and I will often see them a 4th time for a private lesson. I'm seeing them for an hour at a time. So I've got a lot stronger relationship just by the fact that I see them for longer and I see them more. So if I take it over to the veterinarian now has to take a history. They hopefully are going to read all of my notes, and they have to know the client. They have to know the dog. They have to do a lot of things. I can help a lot by having the conversation with the client and then writing the veterinarian a note that says, I've seen this dog for X amount of time. We've done X number of things. We've tried this. We've tried that. And the behavior problem is so deeply profound that we cannot resolve it. And we would like to ask you to consider behavioral euthanasia with us.
Yeah.
And that just makes things so much easier for everybody.
It's interesting just how much the industry's kind of evolved, at least over in the last 5 years, because you're right. I mean, it's something that was avoided being talked about, and it still kind of is in a lot of people's minds, is that it's not a successful resolution, right? So we're not getting success if we're not training the animal, because we're animal trainers, right? And air quotes there. And if we are to face euthanasia, then that's a failure in the eyes of, a lot of people looking at these things. But what's not talked about is that the behavioral euthanasia can be the success in that case. That can be the positive outcome.
Yes.
And if we don't talk about it, and if we don't educate ourselves on how to have these conversations and what criteria we would be bringing these conversations to the table, right, then we're missing a significant piece of, again, navigating the conversations with humans, helping the humans really in these cases as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's good to see that we're talking about it more, right?
I have yet to have a dog write me a check or give me their credit card. It has not happened yet. I'm not going to say it won't, but it hasn't happened yet. We can't forget the welfare of the humans.
I think that's so important to consider. And not every dog, since this is the mighty end of the dog podcast, will stick with dogs. Not every dog is a fit for every household. I have lived with some profoundly dangerous dogs that I did not euthanize because I live by myself. I am a dog trainer. I have been willing to make my life smaller for this reason, but I have gone to see very similar behavior problems in a family with 3 little kids, where making them go through a whole behavior program would not be kind or safe to those children. The decision, like getting our clients to that decision sooner when it is absolutely obvious that this is not a safe place for that animal. I think that is part of our job, and I wish there was more training around talking to people about the less savory options.
Yeah, I mean, think about the disservice to the community as well. If we're kind of giving false hopes to somebody that has a dog that's truly dangerous to either their family or the community, and that's another aspect we don't talk about. We kind of get stuck on these making a good impression to the rest of the training community. Oh, I'll take the most difficult cases, the most dangerous cases, and fix them like it's something we could put on our fireplace mantle. But for me, the trainers that I'm going to respect more, that are able to help clients navigate all of those prognostic factors in their case, right? That's what impresses me, is when somebody really shows a deep understanding of people's emotions, and when they need to recognize that and maybe even read between the lines sometimes in their conversations. That is skill to me. And it's not always, again, saving them all, right?
Well, and I think that brings up a really important thing. You say saving them all, but I've talked to a lot of trainers, particularly trainers who are newer to the industry, who have the idea that if you just know enough, if you just have enough experience, if you just use the right tool, you are going to be able to avoid ever having to euthanize anything under any circumstances. I am here to tell you, I am very, very experienced. I am very well educated in this. I am a junkie for technical details. Okay. I have been doing this for 30 years. And I think that we've got to avoid this hero narrative that we have for ourselves. Well, I could fix that dog. They should never have euthanized it because I could fix it. And I think, okay, you can fix 1 or 2 or 3. But at a certain point, you become a hoarder and you have 72. And then you have another problem entirely. And I think that this is something that we've got to be very, very aware of, and we've got to keep our feet firmly on the ground. I have helped thousands of dogs. And I've told people, this is a dog that we need to have a conversation about, and had them go and see another trainer and come back to me and say, see, Sue, you were wrong. And I'm going to tell you what the answer is when somebody comes back to you and says, see, you were wrong. We didn't need to euthanize this animal. The answer is, I'm glad to be wrong. That's it. Mm-hmm. I don't need to discuss it with them. I don't need to tell them they're wrong. I just need to say, I don't need to be a hero. I'm enough of a hero in my own life. Okay, I've got all these crazy things that I do. I can be a hero in other ways. And the way that I like being the hero the most is by being kind to somebody and helping somebody out. Heroism, in my opinion, comes on a much smaller level. Saving every single dog with every single behavior problem is a recipe for making sure that I can't do the rest of my life well.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to Sue's point that I went and got a master's degree in animal behavior, in large part to try to figure out what I could have done differently around my first behavioral euthanasia. And the only thing I would change if I had Shuduk again in 2023 instead of 1997 is I would euthanize him more promptly. Theodore has things to say about that. I would know now that a dog who is growling at me at 3 weeks of age, like not in a playful way, has a profoundly abnormal brain. And I think I still would have tried some things, but I think what experience has given me is the knowledge of what is not fixable. And it is okay if you are a young trainer and you are going through your first behavioral euthanasia with a client. We've all been there. If you train long enough, you will have this discussion.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to encourage anybody who's new to the field to understand you're not going to resolve every case and turn them all into Larry the Labrador. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And it's okay. I mean, that's a natural progression in our journey as trainers, right? Like we kind of move through that of like, I want to take all the cases. I'm going to take aggression cases. I'm going to fix them all. And then you realize that is an impossible type of goal. It's a good goal to have, but it's not possible, right? And as we get more experience, we learn the nuances that only come with time and experience, right? And so I would love to, if you guys could point out some resources. So I know when the Facebook group first started, it was actually, there was not a lot out there on grief support and other support services that are out there that are kind of in this topic. So there's obviously lots of mental health professional and different avenues to go in that direction. But what have you guys discovered in the last few years for this particular topic for resources?
Well, we do keep a resource list on losinglulu.com, and we try and keep that up to date and keep those links live. So rather than give you guys a bunch of links that you'll have to remember off a podcast, I'm going to encourage you to just go to www.losinglulu.com and look under the resource pages there, because that's where you're going to find the most up-to-date links.
Perfect.
There are a couple of things that are really important to understand. We don't actually have a lot of mental health links there because it's an international list. And so periodically we'll get people who want to post, some of the newer 3-digit codes for suicide prevention and mental health support and that kind of thing. And we don't usually put those up on Losing Lulu because those are very regional. We do have resources like where to find some certified trainers, because that's a more international thing. I have certainly referred many of my clients to your podcast, Mike, because you discuss a lot of issues in behavior. Those are really, really valuable. And Trish and I are aware that these discussions are so tricky. And so one of the things that we do is we run a couple of different courses. So we've got an on-demand webinar called Introduction to Behavioral Euthanasia for Families. And that will be in the show notes so that you can find it. So if you are a pet owner who is dealing with a dog who is particularly difficult, that is actually a really good starting point because it talks about how do we look at the criteria. We also have a 4-week course. We're recording this in the winter right now, so we're on, I'm not sure which week of that, and Trish and I do that. And then we've got another one as well. So we've got behavioral euthanasia for shelter staff and volunteers. And we've just put in place a pro version. So you can buy 5 or 10 seats on the course. And we have discussion groups, guidelines, and all kinds of things for shelter workers. So those are kind of the nutshell. But Trish, you might have a few others that you want to share.
Yeah, I'll just mention that all of those are available on shelterbehaviorhub.com. And I also teach a 13-week behavior mentorship, shelter dog behavior mentorship. And one of the things that we talk about for a whole week, because I think it's so important, is setting adoptability criteria for shelters, because just having a document that says what do we adopt out and what do we not adopt out without some little face with little brown eyes looking at you at the time, having an objective list is really, really important. It'll never cover everything, but it will help shelters make appropriate decisions with their more difficult animals, and such an important thing for us to do. And I offer consults on that privately as well.
Awesome. And anything else you guys are working on?
I've got a new in-person mentorship that I'm offering at Dogs in the Park. We also have something at Dogs in the Park called the Dog Trainers Crucible. And the Dog Trainers Crucible is a online group. It's got a social media component and it has a monthly webinar, but it also has a monthly discussion group and it has guests. So I'm hoping, Mike, I've got to reach out to you. I'm hoping you're going to come and be a guest on the Crucible with me sometime. And it's $15 a month Canadian, which is cheap because it's meant to help trainers who are new to the industry. And so often we'll get people talking about cases that they might be considering behavioral euthanasia on the Crucible, and that's a new resource.
And I'll be sure to link to that in the show notes for sure. Trish, do you have anything else you wanted to add to that list?
Yeah, I mean, Shelter Behavior Hub, we have new stuff happening all the time. McMillan Animal Behavior, which is trishmcmillan.com. If you're a new trainer and you would like help talking a client through a behavioral euthanasia, both Sue and I do private consulting.
Yep.
You can send your client to us. You can hop on the call as well and hear how we talk to them. But we encourage you to come and take the 4-week course with both of us called Talking to Clients About Behavioral Euthanasia, because I wasn't taught this in school. I did an apprenticeship. I did an in-person dog training school. I got a master's degree in animal behavior. Nobody taught me to talk to my clients about it. And I put my foot in my mouth more times than I can count. And I would love to help you not do that with your clients.
Excellent.
Me too, because I also put my foot in my mouth way more often than I should have.
Trish, Sue, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you guys. I'll definitely link to all the things you mentioned. So
thanks so much for addressing this difficult subject.
Yes. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed this informative conversation with Trish and Sue. They've been amazing friends and colleagues, and I can't thank them enough for all of their contributions to the dog training and sheltering communities. Don't forget to head on over to aggressivedog.com for more information about helping dogs with aggression, from the Aggression in Dogs Master Course to webinars from world-renowned experts and even an annual conference. We have options for both pet pros and pet owners to learn more about aggression in dogs. I also have the Help for Dogs with Aggression bonus episodes that you can subscribe to. These are solo shows where I walk you through how to work a variety of types of aggression, such as resource guarding, dog-to-dog aggression, territorial aggression, fear-based aggression, and much, much more. You can find a link to subscribe on the show notes or by hitting the subscribe button if you're listening in on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again, and remember, it's not about the destination, it's often all about the journey. Thanks for joining me for the bitey end of the dog. If you like the show, please feel free to subscribe, share, and give a rating. And hop on over to aggressivedog.com or the looseleashacademy.com for more information about webinars, courses, and conferences, all dedicated to helping dogs with aggression issues. And don't forget, the Aggression in Dogs Conference will be happening from October 22nd to 24th with 12 amazing speakers, all streaming from a television studio in Chicago. It's going to be a truly unique event in 2021.